Hey, Childcare CEOs. All right, I promised to do a 5-day mini-series around money. Money as it relates to the childcare business. And so if I'm going to start having this conversation, it must start at the foundation, which is talking about the true cost of care. If you have encountered me before, I'm sure you've heard me mention it because I do believe that it is the foundation of how we set up the success of our business. If we start to struggle, if we start to feel tightness as it relates to our finances, a lot of times it can be related to how we set up our tuition rates. And so let me explain what true cost of care is, right? I think many of us, if I said tuition, we're clear about, well, how much are we getting paid for each child? That's one thing. But sometimes we don't calculate how much it actually costs us to care for said child, right? And it's not just one child and we set the rate and that's it. We know that we serve different age groups. So we have infants, young toddlers, older toddlers, preschool children, school age children, young school age, older school age, right? So each of them, they have different needs as an age group. They have different costs. The cost that it takes to care for an infant is totally different than the cost that's required to care for a preschool child. So we have to be clear, though, on how much it actually costs. And I'm talking detailed, right? Here's the thing, just off the top of my head, right? We know that staff is a requirement. We know that overhead is a requirement. Right? And when we say overhead, we are talking about our rent, mortgage. We're talking about utilities. We're talking about insurance. We're talking taxes and all kinds of stuff, right? Property taxes. It's so many different things. And depending on where you are, the state, the city, they differ for us. And so we have to be clear about how much does it cost for us to care for this child? And it's so much more than, well, infants, they are required to have diapers and formula. It's a lot. It takes a lot more to run the business. So unless we literally pull out our bank statements, our expenses, and I mean all of them, as a starter, I like to start with, say, the previous month. It's a little easier. But to be honest, it doesn't pull in the full picture of what it costs to care for children for a whole year. And I'll give you an example. Our liability insurance, ours personally, is paid for once a year. We have to kind of make our deposit, and then there's a monthly payment. But it's not even all 12 months, the way ours is set up. So this is an example of, if we're talking in September, my number for liability insurance is going to look different than what it would look like in June, because at some point we have paid our policy. So if you are not very clear about things that may be paid annually, maybe once per year, things that may be paid quarterly or monthly, then you may not actually capture all of your expenses. So what I'm saying is, here's the exercise. Take the past year, take 2025, since that year is kind of new and it just ended. Take all of your expenses from 2025. This does take time for you to do. Not a whole lot of time. It just has to be intentional. But find out what all of your expenses are in totality. And you could easily, for example, this is just a clean example, divided by the number of children that you are licensed for. That gives you a rough example of here's how much it costs to care for each child. Now, this thing gets deep because we really need to do this by age group. We really need to do this by classroom, right? We need to be that clear about what it's costing us to run the business, because a lot of times we're doing it blindly. And overall, we're like, well, here's payroll. Sometimes we're just trying to survive payroll to payroll. So if I know that payroll for this period is $50,000, for example. Maybe for some of you it's $10,000. Your main concern is, can I make payroll? Or then you have to make your rent payment or your mortgage payment. And those are the two biggest, most priority periods that you just want to make sure you can survive that. That's one thing. And I get it, because a lot of that, I've been there too. But when we really want to get to the root of what the issue is, when we start saying we're not making enough money, or we need to make more money, or how come it feels like I'm doing all this work and I'm not getting anything on the other end, it's really because we just don't know how much it actually costs. We have not made sure that the tuition rate that we set covers the expenses plus profit. We don't even talk, that's a whole other conversation. And so until we really do those things, that's how we get to the root of how our business is operating. Okay. So one example, when I started in childcare, my career was totally different before I got into the industry. I was in the fashion merchandising industry, and setting tuition rates is really similar to pricing clothing. By the way, how much we pay for clothes is crazy, okay? Because how much it actually costs to get the fabric for that piece of clothing, let alone the thread and any other accessories we have on there, and to get it sewn up, small percentage. When I say the profits for clothing is crazy. But anyway, I digress. I say that too because a lot of times we don't even have profit added into our tuition rate. Again, that's a different conversation. We need to have it though. I'm saying all of this because when I came in, that's what I understood. I knew that you knew your costs, you set your profit, and then you're like, okay, here's how much it's going to cost. Where I worked, the standard was 65% profit. That's just what that was. If it was designer, it was about 55%, but it could go up to 75, 80% profit. And a lot of times the cost of the clothing could be $6, $8, like guys, maybe at $20, but the profit was always in there and it was a great profit. So when I came into childcare, my mom was like, listen, the state reimburses us, for example, $150 per week. That's how much we're going to charge because that's how much they pay us. And we just want to make sure that we let them know, yep, we need all $150 of it. I came to learn though, when it started feeling like, money is not flowing how it should flow, meaning the cash flow wasn't available. We had those moments where it was like, are we going to make payroll? So what that meant was something was not adding up, right? When we say the math was not mathing, that's what we experienced because we are not clear on what the cost is so that we can ensure that the tuition rate covers the cost and profit, which means it allows us extra money. But if we don't have the other side of the equation clear, if we don't know what the costs are, then how do we know what we should be charging families? That's a lot of times where our issue lies. So I wanted to make sure we started there just for me to ask you, have you calculated your actual cost of care? Do you know how much it costs for you to care for an infant, a young toddler, an older toddler, a preschool child, a school-age child? And if not, no judgment. I don't judge, okay? I do this because I want to be able to share what I've learned and what I see that a lot of times causes us headaches and overwhelm and frustration. So today's homework is really to pause and ask yourself, do I really know how much it costs for me to care for this child? And depending on what your answer is, then you know what the next step is. Yes, it takes time. It means that we have to carve out some time to get the answer. But I promise you, it is rewarding when you are clear about what it is, because now you get to not blindly create tuition rates, but you get to do it with confidence, clarity. You're sure about your business because you know, Here's how much it costs. And when someone asks you, well, ooh, that's expensive. Well, let me tell you what's included in that. Let me tell you what we do, right? The reason our cost of care is higher than maybe even competitors is because I know that we have degreed teachers. I know that we have teachers with a lot of experience. I know that, well, I'm in Philadelphia. Property taxes are high, renting or mortgage are expensive, so overhead is a lot. And we have profit padded into that. So no, by me doing market research, which I understand a lot of us do, we call around and we find out what our competitor rates are. I get it. Not, again, no judgment. We should understand what's happening in our community. But that doesn't mean that because they charge $125 per week that I'm going to try to match that and be competitive. That's not being competitive. That's actually me signing myself up for failure. It really is, because my costs are actually $170, but I call myself being competitive in wanting to get the families that may have gone there. I want to get them because I'm cheap, because I'm cheaper. It really doesn't help me. It actually makes me keep running around in circles trying to figure out why my business isn't sustainable. So yes, let's do our market research for information purposes, but at the same time, we're going to do our due diligence and calculate our personal cost of care so that we can run our business properly, we can set the rates properly, and we can understand that now I can start talking about enrollment, because once I know my rates are set right, I can say, great, here's my break-even number, here's how many children I need to have enrolled so that I know my expenses are covered. Again, that's a whole other conversation. I get excited, but I'm going to stop there because I just want to make clear, please take out the time to know how much it actually costs you to run your business by age group. At some point, we're going to start talking about calculating it by room, because that's a different conversation too. I'm sharing all of this because it can be complex, but we start somewhere. And where we start is just knowing your cost of care. Let's make that normal, that when someone says, oh, what's your cost of care? Well, let me tell you, right? When we start to advocate for more money from funders and we start to say we don't get paid enough, I can be direct and clear about, well, let me tell you why it's not enough, because here's how much it costs for us to care for infants. And the fact that in my state, I can have one staff person to 4 infants, that's a lot. That can be a lot, which means it may cost more for me to run my infant classrooms because I want to service families and I don't want to exclude infants. It costs. So our rate is more expensive for infants versus preschool. So listen, we can have this conversation all day, but I'm going to stop here and I'm just going to encourage you to take the time out to calculate yours. And again, pull your all of your bank statements for 2025 so that you can get an idea as to how much it cost you last year. Because the truth of the matter is, at the end of 2026, it may not be the same, because food costs are going up, labor costs are going up, like things are increasing, okay? But let's start somewhere. Start with 2025, calculate all of your costs, use pencil and paper. You could do it January, here were my expenses. February, here were my expenses. And then you also could use an Excel sheet or Google Sheets, right? That's free. Type it in there. That way you can save it and you have those numbers, and be very clear about, here's my expenses by the month, and now you get the total for the year. Divide that total by the number of children you're licensed for, and that will give you a sense of what your cost of care is. Again, listen, the reason I have all kinds of webinars, programs, and stuff is because honestly, if your program isn't full according to your license, that will also impact your number. But we want to get to the basics. I just want you to know, for your location, whether you're in a home or in a center, large or small, you still need to know what your true cost of care is. listen, share it with me. Okay? I love to hear. And what questions do you have? What came up for you in this video? All right? This is day 1. Tap in tomorrow for day 2. We're going to move into another conversation. I want to keep it relatable. I want to make sure that you get something from it and you actually have some action to take, and let me know how it goes.